Welcome, everyone, to the PFF Fantasy Podcast. I'm your host, Jon Macri, and rookie season continues here in the month of May. We're coming off a couple rookie mock drafts, which were a lot of fun. There are still plenty of rookie drafts going on and plenty that have yet to kick off. So naturally, we're going to keep that rookie content rolling as we focus on some of the late round or sleeper rookies today to target in the back half of drafts. And joining me once again to sort through it all, the one and only Kate Magdziuk. Kate, how are you today?
I'm good. I'm loving this portion of, the off season where rookie drafts are in full swing and it's hashtag get your guy. So we're going to be here to give you some late round rookies, some sleepers to target in your dynasty rookie drafts. And let me tell you, I do think that there are a decent number of names that you can find pretty late in your drafts that might actually have year one value if you know where to look.
Absolutely, right? Like this is, look, they're the hit rate probably not high for a lot of these guys, but there's definitely paths to
Yes.
success here in year one, and that's kind of what the main theme of this is going to be. There's at least one guy for me that I like a little bit more for year two potential than or beyond that than year one, but I think for the most part, what we're looking for from these like late round draft picks in the NFL is their short-term potential, because look, the longevity for these day three picks is not typically high either, right? So we want them to produce now, and then anything on top of that, beyond this year, it is a bonus, right? So this will be fun to kind of sort through. I mean, we both wrote up some of our favorite late round or sleeper rookies to target for PFF.com. Pretty much every player that we have on the list today was drafted day three of the NFL draft. There's one exception who was taken as late as possible on day two, so kind of counts. But almost all of them are well outside the top 30 in Fantasy Pros consensus rookie rankings as well. So they're players that we're mostly expecting to see here near the end of the third round and beyond in most rookie drafts. And I say most because you mentioned it's that hashtag get your guy season, and we've talked about it on previous episodes. ADP is all over the place, and there's definitely some varied value depending on the drafts that you're in. So yeah, again, understanding that hit rate for these players isn't high. We know that, but there are those who emerge every single year. Puka Nacua, like he made this list for me last year, but so did guys like A.T. Perry, Sean Tucker. Like we're bound to have more misses than hits here because that's just the nature of these sleeper type picks. But I think we can make good cases for why these players could be fantasy relevant and why we think they can be those outliers to emerge. So without further ado, let's kick it off with a favorite of this podcast, Kate, a player that we were obviously high on pre-draft. I think we're both in the same boat where day three capital isn't going to deter us too much from our love for Audric Estime, who goes in the fifth round, 147th overall to the Denver Broncos. Tell us about what got him on your late round rookie target list.
I'm still all over Audric Estime. Now let me just paint this picture for you. I think everybody's kind of looking at Audric Estime and they're like, well, he's competing for touches with, Jaleel McLaughlin, Javonte Williams, but it seems like we're kind of making it a given that Javonte Williams is going to lead this backfield. But I actually do think Audric Estime could be in position to win this competition throughout the offseason. You look at what Javonte Williams did in 2023. Now, given he's coming off a torn ACL. So this was in his return. He didn't really see any improvement in the second half of the season, though, which is why I think it holds a little bit more weight. But among 25 running backs with 200 plus carries, he ranked dead last with a 64.9 PFF rushing grade, second to last, averaging 3.6 yards per carry, had the fifth lowest PFF elusive rating, third lowest pass blocking grade, ranks 20th among those 25 running backs with 2.71 yards after contact per attempt. I don't think it's a given that Sean Payton is just going to hand him the keys to this offense. So if Audric Estime, he was our consensus RB3 in this class before the draft, can make a name for himself with his tough, contact balance, tough running style, and well-rounded skill set, I think he could potentially lead this backfield in 2024. Am I just delusional?
No, I like his chances more than most, right? Like especially for day three backs. And look, you laid it all out there perfectly. I mean, and the other thing too, like Denver, they likely figure to be an above average team in terms of run rate. Like they were last year. I don't think that really changes this year with them shipping off Russell Wilson and drafting Bo Nix. I think it's pretty clear that Sean Payton wants to still run the ball. And what he also showed last year, like on the whole, was that he was willing to divvy up time among his backs to rotate them fairly regularly for the most part, right? Like his weekly RB1, whoever it ended up being on any given week was mostly Javonte Williams. He attempted just 51% of the team's rushing attempts, which, it's well below league average, which is closer to around 60%. And like you said, Javonte Williams, he was coming off the injury. That could have been part of the reason for that as well. Like he wasn't fully healthy, but like you said, back half of the year too, the usage, the numbers, they didn't get much better, which you'd hope to see for a player coming off injury. So, there could be at the very least a path to snaps as a RB2 with a decent workload for in Denver for Audric Estime at the very least. And if that's the case, then I think Estime has a better shot at that role than a guy like a Jaleel McLaughlin. Samaje Perine was used more as a receiving back, but we talked about all the reasons we love Estime. The career rushing grade, the rushing grade versus stacked boxes. Both of those things were among the elite at his position among prospects since 2018. So there's a lot to like here. The fall off for Javonte Williams was very evident last year, and he's dealt with injuries, right? So it could continue. Hopefully he bounces back, but if not, hopefully Audric Estime is there waiting in the wings to scoop up those snaps and take over as that RB1, like you said.
Yeah, and even, Jaleel McLaughlin, who is a guy that came onto the scene in 2022 or 2023 and really just kind of blew everybody away with, I think, especially how good he looked in comparison to Javonte
Mhm.
Williams. Like, he's a smaller back. He's 187 pounds. Like, Audric Estimate is the prototypical
Yeah.
running back size, like just over 5'11, 220 pounds. Like, he is the bruiser in this backfield, I think. And for, a guy that I don't think, they're overly committed to Javonte Williams. He was not, a Sean Payton pick. Like, why not Audric Estime? You mentioned the stack boxes, the success he had in that regard. Like, there's not much to not like. I mean, Audric Estime, baby, 91.1 PFF rushing grade against a stack box.
Pretty impressive.
Freak.
Yeah. He's amazing. I mean, there's nobody better at that. I'm coming out of college. So there's definitely a lot to like there. And like you said, size comparison too. We know how, those sub 200 backs tend to see their workloads lower in the NFL as well. So it'll be nice for Estimate potentially to work his way in there. All right, next one for me. I actually think we share this one as well. He made my pre-draft list with the assumption that he likely was going to be a day three back and unlikely to be an RB1 anywhere. But it's Tyrone Tracy, who was drafted by the New York Giants out of Purdue. He was a fifth round pick, 166th overall there. So for me, Tracy lands with the Giants, and I feel like this spot in New York was among maybe the best available for him specifically to emerge as a fantasy relevant rookie. We know the Giants, they brought in a steady, reliable starter, Devin Singletary, this offseason after losing Saquon Barkley in free agency. But outside of that, there's not a whole lot else on this Giants roster to kind of keep someone like Tyrone Tracy, who is an explosive and exciting player, from being involved in this offense as a rookie. And one of the key areas that I think he can potentially contribute right away is as a pass catcher out of the backfield, because he has such significant experience as a wide receiver. He was a wide receiver in college before transitioning to being a running back, but also a little bit due to Devin Singletary's lack of production in that regard for his NFL career, right? We kind of touched on this last week, but Singletary's never cracked a 65 receiving grade despite getting decent volume as a receiver in his NFL career. He's never seen fewer than 45 targets, which includes the playoffs, which is pretty decent, but not overly effective in that role. And for Tracy and this Giants offense specifically, that relied really heavily on Saquon Barkley's receiving ability over the years, I think he can carve himself out a role as that receiver early on. The Giants ranked among the top 12 in the league in running back target rate last year at 18%. Now, they did have Saquon Barkley, obviously, so he accounts for about 62% of those targets, but it's still likely to be a tendency of the offense, even if it's less with Saquon Barkley out of there, with Malik Neighbors in there, question marks at quarterback, those kinds of things. But I still think Tracy makes the most sense to get those looks out of the backfield. So I'm definitely penciling him in for a role right now in 2024, and one that in full PPR leagues I think might be a relatively valuable one as well, for where he's going in rookie drafts. He's right now Fantasy Pros consensus 42nd overall, so RB 13. So definitely somebody you can get in those latter halves of drafts.
Yeah, for a guy with fifth round draft capital, like you might have some question marks about that, but I definitely think it was because of, this late conversion to the running back position. It took him a little bit of time to get there. But what I think is so appealing about Tyron Tracy is that I don't think we really know what his ceiling is. Had, 716 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns on 113 carries, 6.3 yards per carry, had a 40% missed forced tackle rate. That ranked third among FBS running backs. 4.44 yards after contact per attempt, also ranked in the top 4. Like, this dude is a great athlete. I think there's still a lot of potential in terms of his overall vision, in terms of just the way he plays the running back position, pass protection. Like, these are things that I think he still has room to grow on at the next level, which is why I think, like, for as late as he's going in rookie drafts, I'll take the shot, because I don't think Devin Singletary is a given here. There should be opportunity in the receiving game for a former converted wide receiver. I just think the pathway, let's take the pathway of least resistance here. I could picture Tyron Tracy leading this backfield here if he makes this transition to the next level here smoothly. But based on what we saw in his first year at the position, I think there was a lot to like. And I think, if you liked what you saw in that final year at Purdue, I think you have to acknowledge that, like, the ceiling probably hasn't been reached yet for this guy. And there's some upside here at the next level.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like you said, like it's a small sample size for him as a runner,
It's a
but
lot of
it's a really
projection,
good sample.
and
It
that's what you
is.
have to do with him.
Yeah, absolutely, right? But the upside, as far as what he offers with the ball in his hands is what makes him really exciting. Like, he is, a very fast and explosive player. And like you said, like, you look at his career numbers and you ignore sample size, 23.1% explosive run rate is a 97th percentile mark among running back prospects since 2019. 0.39 missed tackles forced per attempt, 98th percentile. 4.20 yards after contact per attempt is 90th percentile, right? Like, those are career numbers for him. It's going to be a small sample size because he doesn't have a lot of career carries, but he's done a nice job earning targets as a running back too, and as a receiver, and being efficient with those touches. 1.31 yards per route run is a strong number for a running back coming out, even though he is a transitioned wide receiver. But like I said, at the very least, can start as that receiving back, work in a little bit as a runner, and potentially be that explosive big play threat that earns more touches as the season goes on there. So yeah, I like Tyron Tracy quite a bit. All right, next up, I don't think anyone at this point is making a rookie sleeper list that doesn't have Kamani Vidal on it. Which, yeah, maybe that keeps him from being a sleeper for those that
Low
are,
hanging fruit. I know.
totally locked in, right? But at the same time, there are plenty who are maybe not aware of the Vidal hype and might want to jump on that train with us. So, Kate, what was it that what was it for you, I guess, that got Kamani Vidal on your list as a 6th-round pick for the Los Angeles Chargers?
Here's the thing about Vidal. It had a pretty underrated, I think, track record coming out of college in terms of his ability to take on a workhorse role. And you look at his landing spot with the Los Angeles Chargers and their very unproven backfield. Yes, they brought in J.K. Dobbins. Yes, that's great, but man has not even had 300 carries in the NFL because he can't stay healthy. He's coming off a torn Achilles. You have Gus Edwards, who in a full-time role, like, didn't have the most productive of seasons. I think they have so many question marks in terms of their backfield that there's no doubt in my mind that the pathway to um, carries is kind of wide open in this offense. And we know what Greg Roman and John Harbaugh want to do. They want to run the football. And I do think that's going to, of course, open up some efficiencies in the passing game. But what they want to do is, um, I think play this ball control style offense. And what I think they can do is, uh, you know, they could stand to find a 3-down running back. He's had 781 total carries over his 4 seasons with Troy coming out. So like in comparison to plenty other options in this class, like it had a little bit more wear and tear on the body. He's also a little bit smaller, just under 5'8", but he's got like a really thick frame, and that helps him a ton in terms of his overall power, his contact balance, and explosive playmaking ability. I think Kamani Vidal is a perfect sleeper, although I will say it feels like he just continues to climb on up draft boards. I think because people understand that like this opportunity in this offense, in this scheme, is going to be significant to whoever ends up leading this team in carries.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we touched on it last week, right? Like he's getting into that, early 3rd-round territory now where, yeah, he probably doesn't qualify as a sleeper because people want to go after that perceived opportunity there, which there isn't a lot of in year 1 for these rookie running backs. But, I had him on my sleeper list as well. I almost didn't put him on there, but I felt okay with it because I had him on the pre-draft list as well. So I was like, yeah, I'm just gonna embrace it here. I do believe in the path to snaps here for Kamani Vidal. And like you said, the Chargers now under Jim Harbaugh, Greg Roman, they're going to run the ball. We know this. If we're looking at Greg Roman's last stint as offensive coordinator in 2022 with Baltimore, they ran on 45.4% of plays. Like that is right on par with the most run heavy team in the league last year, which was the 49ers, who were also 45% or 45.9%, so 46. But the Chargers don't have Lamar Jackson at quarterback, so you factor that in there as well. They're not running Justin Herbert 10 times a game. But based on how they approached like this offseason, like you said, top 5 draft pick on the offensive line, adding a couple capable running backs in free agency and Gus Edwards, J.K. Dobbins, I think we can still expect the run heavy approach to continue. And if you're looking for even like team RB2 snaps for Vidal, like there's a better opportunity for snaps in that role than on most teams in this offense, because as the Ravens RB2 under Greg Roman, they handled about 32% of the carries, which is similar to what we got out of Pittsburgh and Detroit last year, right? Najee and Jalen Warren and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. So depending on J.K. Dobbins' ability to stay healthy, how much they want to use Gus Edwards on early downs, things like that, there's definitely a path for him to carve out a significant role here. And I like the numbers for him coming out of college. That was the main reason for him making the pre-draft list, was 94.3 career rushing grade, which was a 90th percentile mark, 85.5 rushing grade versus an 8-man box. That was a 92nd percentile mark, 0.29 missed tackles forced per attempt, which was 80th percentile. Like there was quite a bit to like for Vidal coming out. Even it was out of the group of 5, and he's got a pretty large workload. But I think that sample size works in his favor as well, because I think it makes him a little bit more trustworthy and in the NFL's eyes to get that's a similar workload in the NFL.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Probably the biggest hesitancy for me at this point is the height. Obviously,
Mhm.
like, that height range for a running back, you don't see it too often in the NFL. But again, the thick frame, the collegiate production, I think all of that plus a really good landing spot, like you could roll the dice on worse targets. That's a weird saying, but yeah.
Roll the dice on worst targets is, yeah, no, I think it works here. It makes sense. I know what you're saying. All right, let's go to the next player on the list here. And look, I think a path to snaps on thin depth charts is always going to be the key theme for a lot of these sleeper running backs specifically. And my next guy, no exception, drafted in the 6th round here by the Las Vegas Raiders. It's Dylan Loeb out of New Hampshire, which is in the FCS. But he joins a team who did very little to address the position in free agency following the departure of Josh Jacobs. So, like I said, 6th round pick. He's going like 43rd overall here, according to Fantasy Pros consensus rankings. But make no mistake, I think Zamir White, like, this has been the clear winner of the offseason, I think, so far for fantasy. But doesn't necessarily mean that there isn't room for Loeb to contribute and potentially step in if White doesn't work out. We don't know that he's any guarantee for a long-term workhorse role either. So, I think for Loeb, like, his primary competition for a handcuff role right now is currently Alexander Madison, who was one of the most inefficient backs in the league last year. He lost his starting job. And then you got Amir Abdullah as well, who will be 31 years old at the start of this season and more likely to contribute, I think, on passing downs more than anything else. But Loeb, for me, like, he comes out of the FCS, sure, but with relatively encouraging metrics. I think specifically as a receiver, where I think he could push Abdullah for usage early in his career. So Loeb earned at least an 81.1 receiving grade in each of his past 3 seasons. That culminated in a 90.5 receiving grade this past year. He has nearly 200 targets for his college career to go along with 1,654 receiving yards and 14 receiving touchdowns on 1.81 career yards per route run, which is a 92nd percentile mark among running back prospects since 2018. So, as a runner, it's not amazing by any means, just an 88.1 career rushing grade, which I think you'd like to see higher for a running back coming out of the FCS specifically. But he does have a strong 0.27 missed tackles forced per attempt. That's one of the more staple metrics for running backs coming out of college to the NFL. And I think he has that potential to earn a role on early or late downs, given his skill set and that relatively thin depth chart, which I think, that's really what we're looking for here in these later rounds of rookie drafts, with Dylan Loeb specifically. And I still love the potential for Zamir White, obviously, but like we said, like, not anywhere near a guarantee either. So I think Dylan Loeb is worth a shot here in later rounds of drafts.
Yeah, that Loeb, no running back has had more receiving yards, more receptions, more yards after the catch. Like, over the past 2 seasons, he has been the top dog among all running backs, with at least 50 targets in that span. Leads all of them in terms of PFF receiving grade in that span. I do think that, especially in like a full PPR format, you're not you're not going to draft Dylan Loeb as a guy that I think you're going to peg for lead back duties. You are probably hoping that he can carve out a decent role for himself as the primary receiving back, which might not lend itself to like the highest ceiling. But there are times in your rosters where, like, if you're in need of a flex play and you have a guy that is going to see 3 to 5 targets per game at the running back position, sometimes that is like, what you need on a bye week, etc. And I mean, it's not like this is the most competitive room in terms of, the wide receiver position. Obviously, they have an aging Devontae Adams. They have Jacoby Myers, who, hasn't always stayed healthy. Michael Mayer, I think, is, going to be heavily involved as a receiver. But, like, there's opportunity for a decent target share here in this offense moving forward. And I mean, I'm going to trust the guy that has, 148 targets over the past 2 years. Like, I mean, that's experience, baby. That's
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, it really is. And look, I mean, it's not even like I expect him to have like this workhorse role or anything, right? Like, I don't think we were expecting that for any of these guys for the most part, right? But
But
you
imagine
know,
like 5 carries per game, 3 to 5 targets per game, and
exactly.
that might result in, a relatively safe floor of, like, 8 to 10 points per game in a full PPR format. Again,
Mhm.
not conducive to, like, a high ceiling necessarily, but I not every player on your roster has to be these high ceiling shoot for the moon guys. Like, Lobby might just be one of those really nice flex plays that you can, you know,
Yeah,
not
and I
feel
think
good about, but feel okay about.
and I think that's basically like the kind of threshold that we want to set for somebody like this in their rookie year who was a sixth round pick, right? Like around 150 touches or so, which it's still incredibly rare for day three picks. Like, specifically for, these fifth or sixth round guys, there's some who have emerged, right, with 150 touches in their rookie season. You look at like Jordan Howard and Tyler Algier, Isaiah Pacheco, the UDFA guys. I have a list: Brendan Oliver, Isaiah Crowell, Thomas Rawls, Rob Kelly, Philip Lindsay, James Robinson. Since 2014, those are the guys. So that's pretty much all of them from the last 10 years. So that's less than one per year, out of a potential, out of like over 160 running backs that played rookie snaps that were drafted round 5 or later. So we're literally talking about like a 5% hit rate here as rookies. But the chances do improve for guys that go beyond year one as well, a little bit. But we also start to see that pool get cut down specifically year over year, as these guys tend not to stick around in the league, and are easily replaced the next season. But for Loeb specifically, like, I do like the path, at least like you laid out, for him in Las Vegas, at least for year one. I don't have like a ton of hope for him beyond this year, unless he does like really shine on those touches this year. But at least this year, the way that team is built, I think there's definitely the opportunity for some year one production for Dylan Lowe.
And this is a team that wants to run the ball. Like
Mhm.
Antonio Pierce, I think this is kind of what they're building up this offense to be, as one of these, kind of run first, control the ball at the line of scrimmage type of teams. And yeah, that could be conducive to plenty of touches for the running backs here in this system.
I think so. All right, let's move on from the running backs now, and we'll talk some wide receivers. And I mentioned that only one of our players wasn't drafted on day 3 of the NFL draft, and that's because Luke McCaffrey went 100th overall to the Washington Commanders, the very last pick of the 3rd round. So I think it still counts here, Kate. Tell us what's got LMC. Not quite the same
Yeah.
ring as CMC, I guess,
No.
but what's got CMC's younger brother on your late round target list?
Just under 6'2", coming into this Washington Commanders offense. He's going to project the slot, right? McCaffrey, yes, brother of Christian McCaffrey. LMC doesn't have the same ring to it, but let's remember, he doesn't have the most exciting like collegiate production profile, but he played the first of his 3 of 5 seasons at the quarterback position. Then he made the transition to the slot wide receiver role. And I do think, based on what we've seen from him so far, like, I think there's some room to grow in terms of his ability as a route runner. But you love the athleticism. He truly does look like a McCaffrey in terms of his overall athleticism. Sure hands. He's a contested catch guru. Just looks absolutely phenomenal in these situations. Curtis Samuel departed this offense this offseason in pursuit of the Buffalo Bills. This slot receiving role will be wide open. And I do think there's opportunity for day one snaps here for a guy who does have sure hands, for an offense that, like, yes, a lot of question marks beyond Terry McLaurin. Jahan Dotson is not worked out to this point in his career. Um, you know, I don't know how this offense is going to shake out, but I do know that, when there are 3 wide receivers on the field, I do think McCaffrey's probably going to be one of them. And the ceiling, I think, is still TBD on like what McCaffrey might actually bring to the table with a couple more seasons of, experience in route running, timing, etc. Because I think all of the physical traits are there. I think, the football IQ is there. Probably helps out honestly in terms of like the transition from a quarterback to a wide receiver. Like, how to be friendly to a quarterback, right? Like those are some innate things that you can't necessarily teach, but he knows because he just transitioned from the quarterback position. Like, I don't have a huge production profile to talk about with McCaffrey. It's just a lot of traits. You like the day 2 draft capital, even if it's barely so. I don't know. I think you could again throw worse darts than Luke McCaffrey.
I think you're right. I think looking at the way this offense is likely to shake out in 2024. Olamide Zaccheaus probably his primary competition for the slot right now, which I don't think makes for a difficult path to snaps, right? And Cliff Kingsbury too, like as the offensive coordinator, I was last time with the Cardinals in 2022. They were just above league average in 11 personnel, so there's room for McCaffrey to see significant snaps here. I don't think he's going to be like the Greg Dortch of Kingsbury's offense or anything. Like it's just not really how he projects. He's not like this super low A dot wide receiver screen type option. It just wasn't what he was used as in college. But I do think out of the slot specifically, just as a typical slot wide receiver, there's room for him to be effective and have a role in the offense. Like he performed really well too. Luke McCaffrey did in the red zone for his career. We're thinking
Contested
about
catchability certainly helps in that regard.
absolutely, right? And like I think that part specifically has me interested in him, like where they can use him in those opportunities on passing downs when they're in scoring position. He also performed really well against zone coverage, which you like to see from your primary slot receivers because they're just going to face more zone than man there. Like 58% of his career rushing touchdown or career receiving touchdowns came against zone coverage. That's tied for the highest rate in this wide receiver rookie class. So, again, coming back to his kind of potential to be effective out of the slot in those high value areas of the field, there's definitely a role for him, I think, in Washington to earn some rapport with Jaden Daniels, kind of become like a go-to option there in those high value, not just for NFL teams, but for fantasy as well, areas of the field. So I like the Luke McCaffrey pick. I warm up to him more every day as a potential rookie asset that I'm looking to draft here.
When in doubt, follow the bloodlines.
Yeah,
That's what I'm trying to do.
absolutely. Yeah, can't go wrong there. All right. Next name on the list, and I'm so glad that you included him in here because I'll take any opportunity I can to sing the praises of Troy Franklin, now of the Denver Broncos, who fell to the 4th round of the NFL draft, though is getting drafted higher than any player on this list today for the most part. And I think that's just a very kind gesture of the fantasy community in rallying support behind Franklin and protesting the NFL for his fall. So, Kate, what's got T Frank on your late round target list? I'm toying with nicknames here. I'm not in love with any of my choices.
T Frank, I don't mind it. T Frank, I,
Okay.
I feel like we're gonna workshop this a
Sure.
little bit more, but I do think T Frank a very good starting point. Now, despite his slide in the actual NFL draft, like I think it was actually kind of a plus for him because he landed with his college quarterback, Bo Nix, who I don't think really has much competition, if any, for the starting position there at the quarterback role in Denver. Franklin, look, he was a guy that in the pre-draft process, I actually wasn't overly high on. We did a episode where we broke down each of these rookie wide receivers. My gripes with Troy Franklin was that, like, yes, he's got the height of an NFL wide receiver, 6'2", but small frame. And boy, does he lack the play strength that you would like to see. And, you know, when he's in contested catch situations, like he's got athleticism, he's got all that. But like if you have him in a situation where play strength is going to be a necessity, he doesn't have it. He has small hands, not the most nuanced route runner, like, fairly simple route tree there at Oregon. But what I love is the pairing of Troy Franklin here with his rookie quarterback. Like, there are a few wide receivers that I think have the potential in this class to top 120 plus targets. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Troy Franklin, probably third on that list, and then Lad McConkey. Like, I just think that innate comfort level coming off of a career year, 81 catches, just under 1,400 receiving yards, 14 touchdowns, averaged a career high 17.1 yards per reception. There's a lot of room to grow here, but I do think that, trading away Jerry Jeudy, there's going to be a lot of opportunity here to play opposite Courtland Sutton. Definitely, I think, has a better ability to separate just based on his athleticism and speed than Courtland Sutton. So, like, if you're looking for the guy that I think is going to be open more often, I think it's going to be Troy Franklin. It's not going to be due to his ability as a route runner. It's probably just going to be because he's quicker and faster than, opposing cornerbacks. But, like, if you're getting open, I don't really care at this point. I think he's going to be very quarterback friendly to a quarterback that already has a built-in rapport with him.
Yeah, I love that. That has me very happy. I do
And
want to say I'm
again, I
looking.
was a very big skeptic, and
Yeah.
you almost had me convinced, but, like, I was still teetering on the edge. I
Yeah.
really do think, like, landing spot in this situation matters so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. And look, yeah, I go looking at my rookie drafts right now and outcomes. I still have 0 Troy Franklin shares, which is
How did
is
that happen?
maddening. I know. It's incredibly frustrating. Like, I've done 2 more rookie drafts since our last episode when I was gonna move him up in my ranks, which I did, by the way. He's now like that middle of the second round range for me. Um, like, I was the last one I did, I was ready to take him at 205 in a league, and he goes 203. So I was mad, I think, to say the least, especially
So he
considering.
barely qualifies for the sleeper episode then. So when I was drafting, most of my rookie drafts are officially over,
Okay.
with the exception of one. But, like, when rookie drafts first kicked off, I think the slide to the fourth round really had people quite nervous for Troy Franklin. Like, this was a guy that we were saying could be a first round pick, and then he falls to the fourth round. Definitely think, like, the NFL Combine probably didn't do him any favors. The gauntlet drill, like, there was, I think, a lot of probably stupid reasons that he fell as far as he did for a guy that just
Mhm.
has some really great athleticism. Who, yeah, probably needs some work as a route runner. Like, I'll take the upside there in the fourth round, and I'm not going to let that draft capital scare me because, again, Bo Nix doesn't care where Troy Franklin was drafted, right? Troy Franklin is his, his best buddy, his best pal, and draft capital is meaningless to Bo Nix. So, yeah, I think he's just going to continue to funnel him the ball because there's that innate level of trust, and I don't. That's not something that, like, we can quantify with a receiving grade or anything like that. But I still think that there's something significant to be said for that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and yeah, maybe he's definitely getting drafted higher than pretty much anybody on this list. But at the same time, like the other draft that I did, where I didn't have a pick until the third round, like he went to 307, which was also a few spots ahead of me. So it's just like, yeah, it's the universe toying with me. I'm ready to like rage quit my rookie drafts at this point, or I'm going to go on full tilt and take him in the first round in my next one just to make sure I don't get screwed again. But
This is the
yeah,
problem, though, with being a fantasy analyst and putting all your takes out there, because
I know.
I've had it happen to me. People will go into your rankings, they'll see where you're, a little bit higher on some people than others, and then they strike right
Yeah.
before you're about to make your pick. It's mean. Don't
It
do that.
is. It is mean. Yeah. We have like an in-person draft that we do for one that hasn't taken place yet this year. And I've had multiple people print out my rankings and bring them to the draft so that they can stab me in the back with them.
No.
So it's nasty. But it's part of the price we pay here. But Yeah, love the opportunity here for Troy Franklin. Like everything that we liked about him pre-draft, that doesn't go away with that fourth round draft capital, even if it does mean that maybe the team specifically is less invested to work him into the lineup. But like you said, reuniting with Bo Nix, I think really helps his chances here. And Marvin Mims is there as well. I think people are probably screaming Marvin Mims at their phones or wherever they're listening to this right now. Like he was more, I think, of a deep ball specialist than Troy Franklin in college. And, people are expecting a breakout season for him, even though that deep ball offense isn't really a part of what Sean Payton or Bo Nix is likely to do here. But I think just having that rapport with Troy Franklin specifically could help his chances, and I think gives him just as good a shot as any on this team as being maybe even second on the team in targets behind a Cortland Sutton, or like you said, I mean, most optimistically leads the team, which I would be extremely excited about. But still very optimistic either way about Troy Franklin here in Denver.
Love it.
All right, we're going to go a little bit deeper here, where again, obviously, success rate starts to drop more and more. But I got a couple guys that I like much later in rookie drafts, and I'll start with the first one, being Devontae Walker, wide receiver drafted by the Baltimore Ravens in the fourth round, 113th overall, currently 41st overall in the Fantasy Pros consensus ranking. So like wide receiver 20. If we're looking at opportunity here for year one again, the Ravens were a team that going into free agency had one of the higher percentages of vacated snaps at the wide receiver position, and they didn't really do a whole lot to fill that void, especially in free agency that was mostly left by Odell Beckham. And I gotta say, like, I like Walker's chances of kind of carving out a role for himself here in year one, even if it's more of maybe like a rotation with him and Rashad Bateman. There's potential, I think, with Devontae Walker. He was Drake May's most efficient wide receiver this past season at North Carolina. He led the team with 2.28 yards per route run, 87.4 receiving yards per game as well. The only problem is he appeared in just 8 games for the year after missing, I think it was the first 5 weeks. So,
I
his
think there was like
big
an eligibility problem.
there was
Nothing.
something about transferring. Yeah, like
Yeah.
he tried to transfer twice or something like that. I can't remember exactly, but there was, yeah, something like that. And that means like his biggest year came at Kent State, where he was in 2022, where he posted, I think, 921 receiving yards and 11 receiving touchdowns. The thing is, like, I think it's his efficiency on the field for me. It allowed him to earn 2.52 yards per route run for his career. That was tied for the 8th best mark in this year's wide receiver class and 72nd percentile among prospects since 2019. So I do like his opportunity to contribute as one of those outside wide receivers after Odell Beckham's now out of there. And I think it's a role that should suit him pretty well, even if it means sharing time with Rashad Bateman, because when lined up wide for his career, Walker earned 2.51 yards per route run. That's a 70th percentile mark among prospects since 2019, and then posted 3.53 yards per route run versus single coverage, which is a decent mark, a 62nd percentile over that span, right? Like, it's not mind-blowing numbers by any means, but like, I think his speed, his ability to separate downfield, I think that helps him find targets from Lamar Jackson in this offense, and could be a potential contributor early in his NFL career, with potential for a larger role down the road there. So, how about you? Any thoughts on Devontae Walker in Baltimore?
I do worry a little bit about like the potential role here for Devontae Walker. Obviously, like Zay Flowers, I think we're going to project him
Mhm.
as the wide receiver one. Understandably, the rotation of snaps maybe between Rashad Bateman, even if Rashad Bateman's playing a part-time role, like I think the biggest probably concern for me outside of just the question of like snaps is what kind of role he's going to have in this offense. Now, over the last 2 seasons, 16.8 yard average depth of target that ranked 16th among 385 qualifying wide receivers. If he is going to be primarily a deep threat on, a offense that they are going to run the ball with Lamar Jackson, they are going to run the ball with Derrick Henry, that might make those opportunities for those deep targets all the more efficient. My question is just like, how often will they be available, right? Like, if he gets a couple of deep shots per game, how much will that translate to consistency? I don't know. Also struggled with drops a little bit. So like my question is more so about the volatility potentially
Mhm.
for Tez Walker as opposed to like the situation. I think, obviously any quarterback or any wide receiver tied to Lamar Jackson, it's not a bad thing. But the question more is about that path to consistency. And I see that as more of an uphill battle for Tez Walker as opposed to a Luke McCaffrey, like we had just discussed.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think for me, like
Upside
just
might be higher, significantly higher, but I think the floor for him is probably also
yeah.
significantly lower. So like I think that's maybe where you look at your roster and say like, do I need upside? Do I need
Mhm.
a bi-week flex play that I can just plug and play, or am I looking for upside? And you know, if the answer is yes, then Tez Walker might be a really interesting late round flyer for you.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty much exactly what I'm kind of envisioning for him. Like year one, like as much as I think he can carve out a role, do I think it's going to be enough for he's making it into fantasy lineups? Probably not, right? But it's an opportunity, I think, for him to kind of showcase what he can do here in year one, hopefully on a full season, right? Where we get a larger sample size from him because we've seen him be efficient and effective in the past. And I think, kind of emerging down the road, I think for both these next guys that I'm going to talk about is, guys that could be something beyond year one, really. So that's kind of where I'm at with Devontae Walker. Um, all right, let's see. Oh yeah, the other quick hitter kind of sleeper target for me is one that I think again probably highly unlikely to contribute here in year one, but could be like a sneaky kind of year two or beyond type candidate. It's Jacob Cowing of the San Francisco 49ers, who was drafted in the fourth round, 135th overall. He's 44th overall in the Fantasy Pros consensus ranking, wide receiver 21, but he was the second wide receiver drafted by the 49ers after they selected Ricky Pearsall in the first round. But I really like Cowing's fit in Kyle Shanahan's offense as a player that they can potentially motion around pre-snap, utilize in those tight areas of the field, like the red zone, where I think he was particularly effective during his time at both Arizona and UTEP. During his career, he earned 56 targets in the red zone, which was the second most in this class, helped him deliver 33 touchdowns for his career as well. Like, definitely a smaller wide receiver. He's probably going to get a lot more usage around the line of scrimmage as one of those kind of low A dot guys in Kyle Shanahan's offense, similar to his usage in Arizona the past two seasons. But yeah, 59 screen targets since 2022 is the third most in this class. That led to an average depth of target of just 7.6, which is the fourth lowest in this class. But since 2017, Kyle Shanahan's 49ers are tied for the lowest average depth of target in the NFL at 7.9, which I think plays perfectly, obviously, into Cowing's skill set. And then you add in, the potential trade rumors with guys like Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. I think his time could come here relatively quickly, not this year, but I think he's one of those guys that I like to target just as like a dynasty taxi squad stash for me, just for the potential in a high powered offense that where he could be a really nice fit here.
I will say, like, one of the points of hesitancy with Cowing, definitely going to be the size component, just over
Mhm.
5'8", 168 pounds. To be fair, like it has, 4.3 speed. So of course Kyle Shanahan's gonna absolutely love that. But like when you're looking at some of these smaller wide receivers who, maybe we can get a little bit more gimmicky with, you're not gonna have a better coach to scheme them up than Kyle Shanahan. And the potential, again, maybe not in 2024, even if these trade rumors don't come to fruition with Brandon Ayuk. Brandon Ayuk is still, going to be a free agent next year. I don't think there's any world where they can conceive, like, barring a massive, contract reconstruction, like, eh, barring some massive reconfigurations to, multiple contracts probably within their organization, they're not going to be able to keep both of these guys. Obviously, you have Ricky Pearsall, really strong route runner, but Cowan could be one of those, guys that you manufacture touches
Mhm.
for and see what he can do with the ball in his hands. So, I mean, really, again, if you're going to have some of these late round dart throws, like, you know, pick the guys on very productive offenses with a talented play caller.
Yeah. Yeah, and yeah, potential nice fit in that offense, and like you said, Ayuk potential free agent, Debo potential trade target. I mean, they just spent a first round pick on a wide receiver, which I think makes those other guys maybe more expendable in their eyes. We'll see how things shake out there, but I don't mind the path to snaps beyond year one here for Cowing. So that's all of our running backs and wide receivers. We got one more name on the list. We got to give some love to the tight ends, Kate. You got Jatavian Sanders of the Carolina Panthers, who was drafted in the fourth round of the NFL draft, going around the 36th spot in consensus rankings, but as tight end 3 here. What do you like about Jatavian Sanders as a late round rookie target?
Coming out of the draft, I actually think like from a potential of earning target standpoint, like Jatavian Sanders actually probably has a relatively easy path to a decent target share. Obviously, the Panthers made a concerted effort to get Bryce Young some weapons. They traded for Deontay Johnson, who I think nobody's going to argue projects as the target leader of this offense here. But over the past 2 seasons, 83.3 PFF receiving grade. That ranks fourth among tight ends since 2022. That's only behind Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer, and Maryland Corey Dyches. I believe I'm saying that right. Among tight ends with minimum 100 targets. Not like the strongest blocker in the world. So really where he slots in is as a receiver over the middle of the field. Solid route runner. I think still room to improve there in terms of his general route running, but I think a better route runner than you would guess for some of these big bodied receiving options across the middle of the field. Now, how often will Bryce Young want to target the middle of the field? I don't know the answer to that, but I do think outside of Deontay Johnson, the rest of this, target share, I think is kind of up for grabs. Like, you know, I just don't think any of these guys are a given. Even Xavier Leggett, who I absolutely loved. Like, I don't know that I love the fit with the Panthers as much. You don't have a ton of depth here. There's no real true receiving tight end on this roster. Hayden Hurst left. Like, there's a lot of opportunity here. And I think Jatavian Sanders, for as far as he fell in the NFL draft, probably a little bit underrated in terms of his ability to contribute as a receiver in day one.
Yeah, I like Sanders quite a bit, like as a prospect, and like you said, like if you just look at the tight end depth chart alone in Carolina, like it's Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas are pretty much the other guys there. None of them have hit 50 targets in a season. Thomas hasn't surpassed 30 targets since his rookie year, which was in like 2018. So, yeah, I like Sanders. I like the potential. I don't. I guess I have a hard time still embracing Bryce Young after last year, right? It was frightening a little bit, that offense, right? And I do have like at least a concern that some of the kind of tertiary options on this Carolina offense outside of Deontay Johnson and probably Adam Thielen are gonna be inconsistent as far as fantasy production goes, but I mean, I'm with you. I like Jatavian Sanders as much as any to kind of emerge here and earn a spot. If even if it isn't year one, like I'm with you. I don't think Xavier Leggett is a guarantee by any means. And you got guys like Jonathan Mingo and Terrace Marshall as well. So Sanders projects as that kind of receiving tight end that we like for fantasy purposes. He, 82.3 career PFF receiving grade is really strong, 1.81 career yards per route run, really nice number as well. And yeah, I think there's definitely potential here, but I think so much depends on Bryce Young, how well he's able to, kind of spread the ball around to some of the other options on this team and get him involved. So there's still a lot of question marks with Bryce Young because last year was such a poor performance, I think, for him as a rookie, relative to what we expected from the number one overall pick. But yeah, there's definitely a path for obviously improvement for Young, and then Sanders can get his way in there too.
Yeah, I do think that, Young is definitely going to be the biggest point of hesitancy here. Rookie season, 11th highest uncatchable, inaccurate pass rate among quarterbacks with at least 100 pass attempts. But I am going to give you one stat that, like, maybe it will tickle your fancy a little bit. Actually ranked 11th highest in terms of accurate plus throws. So throws with elite ball placement to maximize yards after the catch. So, like, for as much bad, there was a little bit of good. And I do think that, like, yeah, could the Panthers don't look like the Bears right now, right? Like, they haven't achieved that level of rebuild, but I do think for what they were working with here in 2024's offseason, like, probably, like, I would give them a B plus in terms of roster reconfiguration, adding depth, like,
Yeah.
especially given the tools and the limited capital that they had. Like, I think they could have done worse. So, like, I'm going to project the offense to take a
Mhm.
leap forward here in 2024. I'm going to project Bryce Young to take, at least it can't be worse, right? It can't be
Right. Yeah.
not be worse. So, like, all of those things combined, yeah, Bryce Young definitely going to be the biggest point of hesitancy in terms of buying into Jatavian Sanders. But I think from, like, a depth chart perspective, especially in the tight end room, like, there is room to, depending on how his offseason goes, to emerge. I don't think any of these guys, Tommy Tremble, Ian Thomas, like, I don't think they are givens for a day one starting role. I don't think they've done enough as either receivers or blockers, to be honest, to really maintain that role without any question. So, yeah, I'll take my shot, especially like
Yeah.
in a tight end premium league. Yeah, give me the potential for Jatavian
Mhm.
Sanders all day.
Yeah. No, I'm with you there. I definitely think that Bryce Young, the Carolina offense, is going to be better than what they were last year. I don't think that's, a necessarily high bar to set, but I do believe that they will be better because they're putting him in a position to succeed based on how they treated this offseason too, right? So I do like that part of it. I think, we'll look into it. We got a long offseason to see how much better that offense can be, but I do like the potential of them being better, and Jatavian Sanders could be a beneficiary of that for sure. So yeah, that is going to do it for our rookie sleepers or late round target picks here. Hopefully that gives everybody some maybe lesser known names to kind of consider here in the latter stages of rookie drafts, as those are still going on here. But yeah, that's going to do it for us. Thank you all very much for listening. For those of you on the YouTube channel, please give us a big help by liking and subscribing to the channel as well. We greatly appreciate that. And also, as always, a huge thank you to the great Kate Magdziuk for joining me, breaking it all down, and doing this rookie content with me. Kate, really appreciate it. So before you go, please do let everybody know where they can find more of you and your work as well.
Yeah, give me a follow on Twitter, X, whatever, at Kate Magdziuk, Magdziuk. Got a couple of articles coming out on PFF this week, including one I'm really excited about, 4 late round wide receiver targets with the potential to lead their team in target share in 2024. Check it out.
Nice. That's hot. Yes, like that. That'll be a fun one. Yeah, as for me, again, everything up on pff.com. I've updated my rookie rankings for 1QB Superflex. The IDP rankings are up there. Did a write up of our rookie 1QB draft that we did on the podcast as well. I wrote up highly drafted rookies with the most difficult path to playing time in year one as well. And then I'll be back in the podcast feed here Friday morning reviewing and ranking the rookie defensive backs for IDP with John Glosser from Dynasty Nerds. So if you're into IDP, check that out as well. But until then, thank you all again for tuning in. And until next time.